Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Minnesota Twins Out of the Park 23 long-term sim. Today we've played through the trade deadline, essentially. So the couple things to talk about is first off, just kind of quickly for the team, we're climbing back in there. We're 50 and 51 now. After our loss, we've had a couple of opportunities to get over 500, have failed at all of those. But we did have a decent representation at the All-Star game. We had Joan Duran make it as a reliever. Kirilloff makes the All-Star team in his first full season up in the big leagues, as well as we had two starters. We had Gio Urshela make it as a starter. A little surprising that he would make it over Bobby Witt as a starter, but that was cool. And then Carlos Correa, who's just been an absolute stud for us. The 126 WRC plus, putting up already 4 WAR this year, more than pretty much anybody in the league other than Mike Trout. And if Trout gets hurt, there's a world in which Correa wins MVP this year. So that's been fun. As far as trades we made for the deadline, that is not where I wanted to go. Transaction log. So earlier in the month, we basically made a couple of moves to open up money because, like I mentioned in the draft video, it seemed like we were a little bit low on where we wanted to be there. So we basically sent away Emilio Pagan, who was struggling. This is very satisfying to do after he blew the game. The Twins, this video gets released last night, blowing the 3-run lead in the ninth. But he's been awful in this sim, so I felt fine trading him. Well as a couple of pieces that I don't think really are anything that we basically had to include with Pagan to be able to get rid of him. Getting a little bit of money, but mostly just getting rid of the money on the Pagan contract. We then also traded Randy Dobnak. So this is more of it's a little bit of a salary dump, but it's also some usefulness part of this trade, where Dobnak is a guy that I don't think is that great. And this contract that the Twins signed him to is quite a bit more than I want to be paying a guy that would basically just be a long man for me, I think, at best. Because this isn't the type of guy that you want to trust in the back end of a bullpen, or really as a starter even. I would rather have him as a starter than a back end bullpen guy, but just I don't think this is a very good piece. He had struggled for me during the rehab assignment in AAA, so we shipped him off, as well as Jermaine Palacios, who is basically a plus defender with a bat that's pretty rough. Wow, they have him an A+ ball at 26. That's not what I would have done. He was doing fine for us at AA, and this is sort of more what I expect from him. It's just I don't think this is a good enough bat at the major league level, but I mean, this is a guy that can be a utility defensive guy for you. As well as Misael Urbina, who is a piece that is interesting for sure. He was struggling for me in A+ ball this year after doing well in A ball. But the thing is with him is he's a corner outfielder that doesn't hit for power. And that's just not the type of player that I really want in my organization unless he's an elite defender there, or kind of has that Luis Arraez type prospect. But like gap power as his second highest stat, there's a potential major league like 4th outfielder here, but I don't see the massive upside. The main major league piece I got in return is Kyle Isbell, who has kind of become my center fielder, everyday center fielder, who has not hit quite as well as I would hope, but is at least a 65 range. I basically was paying for the upgrade there for while Buxton is gone. And is obviously very good defensively in the corners as well. as kind of a. This is a guy that I really like for a fourth outfield piece once Buxton comes back. The left-handed bat is not great because Kirilov and Kepler both hit left-handed, but it was the best, at least reasonably pseudo center fielder that I could find for dealing Dobnak, so that is where we went that route. And then we also picked up another kind of young corner outfield type that can maybe do something. He was doing well in rookie ball for the Royals, is doing well for me as well. Well, I don't think that this is obviously super likely, kind of with, as well as with Atrian, the guy that I signed. I think this much more likely comes down. Um, it's still an intriguing corner outfield bat, and if that turns into anything, then that would be great. But realistically, that's probably that's a hope and a prayer. We did manage to sign all of our draft picks, of which probably the most interesting note so far has been Cam Collier just absolutely destroying rookie ball. I mean, already the game saying he has the 40 home run power. Like, this is why we drafted this guy. Also, potential plus defensive player at third base. Where this is, I mean, he's only 17. Like, this is a piece I'm super excited about. And then we made one pretty big trade. It's unfortunate that kind of immediately afterwards, Bundy went on the 60-day IL because I couldn't really find another piece. But we traded for Noah Syndergaard, who's having a good year. FIP says it should be potentially even better year. And yeah, so this is an exciting bring in, I think, for the team to be a number 2, number 3 starter behind Sonny Gray. And the pieces we gave up for were Bailey Ober, who just has struggled for me at the major league level this year. He was good in AAA. And I mean, and the FIP does say that he should be better. But like, I worry this movement's even farther down from where it started out with in the game. I just think he would give up too many home runs to be a viable piece, I think. Even with Minnesota does suppress somewhat. And maybe we'll regret that. But and then Drew Strotman as well, who is I think is a reasonable reliever. This was a guy that I didn't really want to give up, but I'm okay trading a guy who I think his upside is reliever. Bring in Syndergaard. Because of the budget stuff we had to have them retain a lot of the salary, which is I think why we had to give up a couple of pieces in order to get him, because the Angels are just awful, even with, Syndergaard having a good year, Trout being 6 WAR at the All-Star break, and Ohtani doing Ohtani things, but they're awful. So, brought in Syndergaard, and honestly, this is a contract that I don't hate, and is something that I will be very heavily considering doing something like this. I don't hate at all having the player opt out if the potential just 2 more years. So this is something that will be considered, and we might be looking at moving into the future. As far as kind of some of the general team stuff, Arise is picking it back up. Even though it doesn't look like it with the 80 WRC plus and OPS plus for the year. His July was kind of that first month of being above average. The turnaround is starting to happen. And even towards the kind of part of June as well, we're starting to see, at the very least, kind of this on-base percentage number going back up, even if the slugging isn't there. That's not why he's there. But if he gets on base at that 350, 360 clip, like, that's really, really good. Obviously, we have our 3 All-Stars. Well, Kepler's hitting a lot of home runs. Miranda's kind of doing his thing. Jeffers is kind of been up and down. There's certainly a world in which I kind of did a little bit of comparison here between him and Jeffers, but where Blake Hunt was kind of that other piece we got in the Corey Kluber trade, but this might end up being a Kluber was the other piece we got in the Blake Hunt trade, because this is a guy that I think is potentially going to be pretty good for us. It's unfortunate that he bats the same way as Jeffers, but he's better defensively and is a better hitter. Like when we look at the potential, contact grades out the same, gap power grades out the same, more home run power, more I, more avoid Ks. So there's a world in which Blake Hunt is the catcher of our future. Because again, remember, defensively, more catcher ability, more catcher arm. So yeah, that he might make Jeffers expendable. Because he hasn't played a lot of major league time, I still have Jeffers as my everyday starter at catcher, but we'll see kind of how that goes, because obviously Jeffers is closer to arbitration. It won't be this year, but I believe it will likely be the year after. We go ahead and double check that. Okay, so no, so it's a little bit farther away, but yeah, so that'll be something interesting to think about. This number is pretty high, which is part of the reason why I haven't made any commitment to bringing back Syndergaard, is because there's a lot of kind of questions still out there. The Archer team option, we never pick up. Mancini, we never pick up. Bundy, I think the shoulder injury makes me not pick it up. He was having a pretty decent year, honestly. But the injuries have been to his shoulder, and that's a problem. Why is this not showing me what? Oh, just says shoulder inflammation for all of that. So I guess he doesn't have to have surgery, but yeah. So, but I mean, a shoulder injury for a pitcher that was already 29, so it'd be going into his year 30 season. I mean, I think it's a we turned down the option, and we potentially look to bring him back on a cheaper deal than that 11 million. But yeah, so extending Syndergaard is certainly a possibility. I want to see a little bit how he does here before I do that, but I think that's an exciting addition to the team, and the fans are obviously excited. One other thing that's just really frustrating, when you go and you look at this expanded standings, -5 from what our expected record would be based on our run differential. Like, this is a team that should be solidly in the playoff hunt, as opposed to being 5 games back of the last wild card. So yeah, we're gonna hope that we can play a little bit closer to this run differential. I mean, we're 5-18 in 1-run games with an elite bullpen, so that's just hard to kind of counterbalance. Where hopefully we can kind of figure some of that stuff out. And the other thing to talk about today is with our prospects. So I do kind of have these two for keeping an eye on stuff. I do want to kind of keep an eye on all of the draft picks that I've made. These are the guys that are kind of the later round picks, just to kind of see if they turn into anything, but I'm not going to monitor them super closely. This is a guy that's gotten off to a pretty good start for me in those first 4 starts with the 3 RA, 3 FIP. That's nice to see. On the prospects level, as far as people that I'm like following more closely, probably the most interesting note here is Stephen Hajar. Is probably the main kind of promotion I'm going to be looking at right here, because he has pitched very well at that level. believe it's, I should double check which A plus is the Midwest League. Yeah, so he looks like he should be about an average, league average-ish pitcher in high A. So we are going to go ahead and promote him there for the rest of the year to see how he does there. Vidpovich is coming back off of a shoulder injury and is now having more shoulder issues. Great. So that's unfortunate and means that he's probably not going to develop, which means I should probably think about trading him. Because if he has value in the offseason, that's a piece that I need to not be scared to move. Blaine Enlow is just now coming back. Zach Green, the piece that I should probably be promoting to AAA, honestly, as well. Even though that bullpen is starting to get fairly crowded, but he's been elite at AA, even though the FIP says maybe not quite elite. He's 25. That's probably where he should be. Rikas has struggled. He'll stay at AA. Varland is... The ERA is nice, but the FIP is a little concerning, especially since he's not a big strikeout guy. I think that one of the things to kind of think about when we're kind of looking at ERA versus fielding independent pitching or FIP is I think the more that the guy is a strikeout pitcher, I think the more important looking at fielding independent pitching is. Whereas I think a guy like this is going to need to have his fielding be good behind him for him to be good. So the ERA might tell a slightly better story, even though the K per 9 is pretty close to 9 per 9. So that's something to consider, but my starting rotation in AAA is kind of Philly. At this point, it's kind of same thing with Woods Richardson. And as he is a guy that I do think relies a little more on strikeouts, this is a little more concerning to me. So I think he finishes the year out at AA as well, and then we kind of see what happens at AAA rotation. Lazovic is starting to rebound, even though the FIP is still higher than I would like. Josh Winder, I think, continues to be my kind of sixth starter, essentially, of if I have issues in the Major League roster with any of the players there with injuries or whatnot. Winder's the guy I call up. Sands, I'm just really not sure about as a starter. I go back and forth on whether or not I want him starting. So when we look at the AAA, I don't really care about Kaprelian. This was the kind of failed signing off of the waiver wire. But as far as like real kind of potential other starters goes, I guess I don't hate... This is actually less full than I thought. Which actually I think means... No, I don't really want to call up either of these guys. Yeah, 35. So Woods Richardson would probably actually be the one I'd be more likely to call up, but I don't think I have arms that are ready for that. So I think what that means then, is there a guy that wants starting? I mean, I don't really want Rozek starting because he's like a lefty for me to potentially call up. Stashek's a guy who's just really struggled, even with like my scout's super high on him. But I mean, 55 control, but 4 walks per 9, 2.5 home runs per 9. I mean, yeah, it's not a huge sample of 22 innings, but man, that's sort of where we're looking on the pitcher side. We'll kind of have to think about this a little bit more. What we want to do here. Just have 6 starters. I don't really like Smeltzer. We're gonna move Smeltzer up to AAA because there's just no reason to have him in AA. So yeah, I had him pitching out of my bullpen earlier. This is really weird. I don't know why he would be extremely popular. Sometimes that just happens where there's weird situations like that. Then on the hitter front with the main prospects. So we've got kind of a lot of rookies. Talked about Collier having a really good year. Andrade's having a pretty solid season to the point of it might be worth sending him to A ball. I mean, that's decent. Honestly, it might be worth doing that just to kind of open up some more playing time at rookie ball. This is always one of the biggest issues with kind of the rookie ball situation is you can kind of get clusters of people, and it can make it hard to make sure that you're getting enough playing time for everybody. Because then when you include some of these guys, I don't really care about him losing playing time at A ball. And this is just kind of, I went pretty heavy on outfielders, it looks like. So that was probably a mistake for me in the draft. But, I mean, I could play like him at second base. I could play Miller at short. If I call up Andrade to A ball. But also, just the year he's having, I think I just value his development more. So I think we're going to go ahead and do that. Encarnacion just kind of came down. He was another one of those like potential 80s that has dropped quite a bit. Kind of more into the more traditional third base, first base outcome. Which frankly, I mean, if this develops to that, is still a very good player. And he's hitting well in rookie ball this year. Torres has been pretty decent. Atrian has been very good, and he's the number 4 prospect in baseball, which is I think one of the biggest reasons why I think that some of these tools might actually end up developing pretty close to being 80s because they ranked him so high there. He's hitting well. I'm very excited to see Atrian in a couple of years on the major league team. Ramos, it's unfortunate that he ended up getting hurt and is out for 8 weeks, is probably through the end of the year, but again is hitting very well. And that's good. Kavoko is a guy that's been hitting very, very well for me. We're going to leave him in A+ ball to finish out the year. And then we'll probably promote him to AA to start next year. To the point where there's a very real chance that this is our starting third baseman in 2024. Because I don't know how much, if keeping Urshela around is something that's going to make sense beyond next year. Rodriguez is a guy who falls close to that spot that I was talking about with Urbina, the guy that I traded, but I think he's just a better hitter. To the point where if a lot of these tools develop, I mean, this is pretty close to Kepler, who's having a very good year for me. So even though I don't think he's a center fielder, that 55 range isn't enough. I think this is a workable corner outfield piece. And honestly, I should probably be having him play the corners. Let's start using him in left field, I think, for now. Let's go look at this team. Okay. Sections. He is in high A. I don't think there's anybody I care about here. I mean, this is a 35 potential. I mean, this is like a decent guy, I guess, but I'm not super worried about losing playing time for him. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, he can play left field for me. There, we can get him some more work in the corners, get those corner ratings filled out, and hopefully have him turn into a corner outfielder for me at the major league level. Cabrera was the guy that we traded for from the Yankees. Again, it's this kind of fairly standard, except I really like that 60 discipline that you don't get a lot of the time. You a lot of time don't see that number get this high. Yeah, I mean, there's definitely potential here. Hasn't played super well this year. Rosario's been decent. I mean, I think this is just kind of a worse version of Rodriguez. Austin Martin continues to be very good. The on base percentage is just staying incredible. To the point where even though the slugging is bad, I just don't know that it matters because I think he can play everywhere fine in the infield. You probably don't really want him playing short, but I think he could play it in a pinch. And then I think that we need to get him some reps in the outfield, which is kind of part of the problem that we're facing us from calling him up. Is I guess I could just move Larnack back to DHing. He's a guy, both him and Royce are starting to pick up a little bit of being above average hitters in June and July. I think for Royce, I think it's just in July. Yeah, in July he's been really, really good. Worth over 1 WAR. Half of 0.5 WAR in the last week for Royce Lewis. Yeah, where we're trying to get him kind of fully rated out in the infield. And I mean, this is probably our starting shortstop next year in the majors, unless we can sign Correa, which we are probably going to try to do, but I think he's going to be priced out based on the year he's having. Steer, Potts are just kind of some potential interesting pieces that haven't been like outstanding or anything, but they're kind of there. Wallner hit the cover off of the ball in AA. Got off to a slow start in AAA, but is starting to kind of pick it back up. Yeah. So, I mean, this is kind of, again, another corner outfielder. It's unfortunate that all of these guys are left-handed hitters. So is Rodriguez, actually. So that's kind of unfortunate that so many of these guys bat left-handed. So is A-Train, so does Ramos. So that's going to be something to think about a little bit. I mean, Wallner can also play first base. Okay. So I'm guessing that's probably just based on the height. Yeah, it's not really a very good first baseman. But yeah, so that's where we're at prospect-wise. I guess I could promote him to get him that last little bit of center field rating. He's a 60 range, which means like functional there. Let's take a look at who am I playing in center field here right now. Cole Sturgeon. It's not somebody I care about. Kyle Garlick's not useful, really, with how well Kirilloff and Kepler have been playing. I mean, he can just kind of DH. Yeah, so I think Austin Martin deserves the call-up, so we're going to go ahead and give it to him. But instead of playing him at second base, because 55 is fine, we're going to go ahead and play him in center field for right now. And go ahead and get that last little bit of rating there before we potentially do some other moving around of pieces. Or we could play him at short. Now we'll stick him in center field for now. Have him get some reps at AAA, see if that on-base percentage can continue to stay as high as it is. It's nice because he's not even a guy we have to add to the 40-man this offseason either. So yeah, so that is the current state of the team. If we can start playing closer, I mean, say the same thing I said 2 videos ago, if we can play closer to that Pythagorean record, then we can still make the playoffs. Yeah, the Yankees have just been on an absolute tear. So the Royals are now the team for us to catch. And I think we can do it. I do think this is a team that can make the playoffs. I don't know that the Royals are quite that good. So, yeah, we will see. That will probably be the next video will be at the end of the regular season. So, yeah, I hope you guys have a good rest of your day, and I will catch you in the next one. Bye.